We are live, you guys. This is another week of the Realty Success Hub, and I'm super excited to join you today. I'm Angela Brown, and I'm from the cleaning side of the move-in, move-out cleans of the cleaning industry that realtors are so fond of when either there's a seller or a buyer and a home transaction has to take place. So I'm super excited that I get to be part of this because I've spent my entire career trying to figure out how do we please the realtors and the homeowners and the home buyers and the banks and the other realtor and all those things. And so I just am super excited that I get to be part of this. And today we're going to be talking about some of the fears that homeowners have when they go to sell their home. And with me today, I have Brooke Bryant, who's a realtor, and I also have Erin Brown, who's a realtor as well. Brooke is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Erin is in San Antonio, Texas. So Brooke, I'll let you get started. Introduce us, if you will. Share a little bit about who you are and how you got in the realty space, and then we'll bounce over to Erin.
So, hey, everybody. So great to be back. Brooke Bryant. I'm with Bryant Realty in Charlotte, North Carolina. Started in the real estate industry about 11 years ago as a second career. My husband's been in real estate land development and wanted to add another pillar to his business. So we do home sales now, and it's fun and exciting. And a lot of clients do have fears, and it's our job to try and help everyone through those.
Well, thank you for that. And Erin, how about you?
Yes, based out of San Antonio, Texas, full-time realtor, and absolutely love it. Been in the business going on 14 years now. So it's exciting times and an exciting market.
Yeah.
Well, in any market, I hate to say this, but there are fears like, oh no, what am I going to do about this? And then we have to say, what is the this? So today I've got a couple of things that I want to ask you guys, and either of you can answer or both of you can answer. I will let whoever feels inclined to jump in and share with us the information. But we talked a little bit last week about some of the fears that people have, and we were able to get some of those resolved. Over the week, we had a lot of questions and comments come in about some of the other things that we're talking about. But the big concern about what we have is when you're selling your home, what does that look like? And I'll make us small on the screen here so that we can see here. But there are fears that range from not being able to have your home ready in time to not being able to get what you're hoping for your home. And so our first concern, and picking up kind of where we left off last week, is what happens if you price the house wrong or fear that you will price the house wrong? How do we resolve that, either as a realtor or if you're selling the house by yourself?
So I'll jump in on that. Your realtor is going to help you price the home based on recent sales in your area with comparable homes, and use a comparative market analysis to do that. So they'll see homes with same amount of bedrooms, same square footage, 1-story, 2-story, as close as they can find to your home within the closest proximity and the closest sale date to help put a value on your home. And then also to judge the market. If there are homes in your neighborhood that are getting multiple offers within a day, 2 days, a week, then that's going to help your realtor help you decide how to price your home. And then the fear about pricing, if your buyer isn't paying cash, they're getting a loan, there's going to be an appraisal. So that determines what the bank is going to loan the buyer for your home. So that's where the sticking point is, what the appraisal comes back to be. And this crazy market we've seen, buyers have been paying above ask price or above appraisal price and just paying that difference with cash.
What if you don't have the cash?
Then you can't do that. Then you miss out. That's been I work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and you'll hear about that frustration. Charlotte, North Carolina, it still continues to deal with that. Our inventory levels are getting better, but if I'm working with a buyer and they fall in love with a house, we put an offer in, it's got multiple offers. If they can't come above and pay cash for that difference, they're going to lose out on that house. And hopefully the next one that comes along, they'll be able to be competitive.
I've got a buddy of mine that bought a house during the boost of the I don't know what you call it, the craze or whatever of like last year, and they put in $50,000 over asking price on their house, and they were still turned down because somebody outbid them on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's what realtors refer to as the highest and best offer. And that doesn't necessarily mean who's paying the most, but whose offer has the least contingencies. So if I'm offering you 100,000 for your house and Aaron's offering you 110, but I'm paying cash and he has to get a loan, mine's for less money, but I'm paying cash, you don't have to worry about financing falling through. So the seller could consider that to be a better offer.
And when you say contingencies, what are you talking about there? Is that like, hey, I will give you less money up front, but then I don't require you to replace the foundation of the home and fix the broken driveway and all that stuff?
If you agree to forego any repairs, if you forego an appraisal, so regardless of what the home appraised for, you're going to pay the agreed upon price. So you're bringing cash to the sale. Those are some of the contingencies.
Are there any contingencies at all? And I ask this just of personal greed, but are there any contingencies where they say, oh, don't worry about bringing in a professional cleaner and the house can just be as is and we won't clean it at all. We'll just clean it ourselves. Does that ever happen?
More often than not, we see a request for a professional clean.
So they still want the house clean no matter what the contingencies are.
Yeah, because that's a pretty, I mean, that's not thousands of dollars. That's an affordable, and it's not really contingency. I mean, you're not going to lose a deal over a professional clean, but it's an easy contingency or an easy negotiation point to make that, yeah, you've been great. You paid us above ask price. You didn't have to get a loan. Of course, we'll have the house professionally cleaned for you. So it's an affordable way to instill some goodwill.
Got it.
If that does become a sticking point, oftentimes realtors will jump in and help out with that.
Yeah.
And when you say realtors jump in, what does that look like?
Comes out of our pocket. We'll pay for it.
Okay. So then back to the greed question, which is the house cleaning end of things. If I'm a house cleaner and let's say a realtor has jumped in and they're going to pay that out of their pocket, what is the communication to the house cleaning company that, hey, the realtor has jumped in, we're paying for this out of our own pocket versus the buyer is paying for it or the seller is paying for it? Because that's one of the biggest confusions that we have is who's actually paying my fee here. Because if a cleaning company comes in and they give you a quote of, let's say, $1,100 for the cleaning, that's the move in, move out clean, make sure everything is spick and span. And then they get in and they find that there's, I don't know, some kind of a pest infestation, or they find that there's something else that is going to take extra time, or it's going to require an extra service and they have to charge more money. Who do they go back to for the money? So how is that communicated from the realtor's perspective? And in a perfect world, what do you wish would happen?
As realtors, we typically negotiate with companies on bulk discounts and fixed prices. So whether it's a moving company or a cleaning company, whoever that ends up being, we try to get a fixed price per square footage on the clean for bulk, basically. In other words, every transaction I do, I'm going to hire your company to do a professional cleaning. I need a fixed price for X amount of square footage. And then as those homes move in square footage, I know more or less what I'm paying for. And when I ask for a professional clean, it's going to include your list of what you're willing to do with those upgrades, right? Hey, if we need a deep cleaning on the fridge or the oven or something, it's going to be an extra 75 or 175 bucks, whatever that is. At least I know going into it as a realtor, kind of what that expectation is. And more or less, I know what those cleans are going to cost. So I can factor that into, what I'm offering a client on any given deal.
And when you're talking to a customer or a client, do you factor that price into them? Say, hey, this is going to cost you $1,100. And I just throw that number out. That's not a magic number or anything. But do you factor that in and give them kind of a ballpark range as to what they're expecting when the house goes on the market?
I think realtors might do it differently. What I do is I have a list of third-party providers that offer things like cleaning services, pressure washing, those kinds of things. Here's their average pricing. And if you would like any of these services, you're welcome to call them, get them set up. And then if it comes into a transaction where it's like a make or break on a home where somebody's willing to walk away from a deal, a great example of that is home warranties. I usually offer my clients home warranties if they work with me. Those usually run about $500 to $600 here in San Antonio. And so I know going into every transaction that I have $600 set aside for a home warranty to bless my client with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've already got those costs set aside. And then I offer those third-party cleaning services for the home. This is what these companies charge, and you're welcome to call them or use whoever you'd like. And that usually seems to work pretty well. If I get in a situation where like there's a home that's really dirty or it was left in terrible condition, I will often offer that as a nice gift, you know, in the process of, hey, I'll go ahead and cover that cost for you. The only thing is here in Texas, and it might be different other places, if we do that with a client, any cost that we give a client for a service has to be disclosed. And we disclose that to the title company and let them know, hey, we're paying X amount on this transaction for X said service.
And
Yeah,
is that
it's the same in North Carolina. We have a professional services disclosure that we provide our clients. These are disclosures that I'm going to help you obtain, or services I'm going to help you obtain, but they sign off on it. And then if as a realtor, I pay for a service such as that for my client, they'll put it on the closing disclosure as a realtor credit.
so?
Yeah.
How, from a cleaning perspective, how does a cleaning company get on your list of preferred vendors or preferred service providers?
At least for the way I run and operate business, it's I basically test you and see if you offer a great service and if we've had any complaints. Once you've worked with 3 clients, you get added to my vendor list, and then it's based on client feedback on your service. And if I use you and you work well, then I'll also offer your services to the brokerage I'm with. And once you get put on the brokerage list, then you've got multiple agents using that same service for the same, more or less same pricing. And again, like for cleaning, that's based on square footage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another question from the state of greed and cleaning. What would a house cleaning company have to do to be qualified to be on your vendor list? You say if they work out. And what exactly does that mean? If I show up on time and I do a good job, is that good enough? Or is there a certain criteria or a checklist that you use that qualifies me or separates, let's say, the cream from the crop?
In my experience, what it really ends up being is the quality of work that you do and the communication you have.
Okay.
Not only do I get feedback myself, but my clients are going to give me feedback. And if they go to move in and they're like, hey, this room was never clean, this wasn't touched, etc. Great example of that. I had a transaction where we had a professional cleaning company come in and clean the home. And upon move in, the client came in and said, hey, we don't feel like they did a good job. There's dead flies in the windowsills. There's dust all over all of the fans, on all of the lights. We can see cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. And I was like, there's no way. So I drove out to the home, and sure enough, across the board, all of those things were there. And so they did clean. They just didn't do a very thorough job. And so we ended up having them come back out. We had to pay another service fee. And they did those things, but it was the last time we used that company.
Now, are there, do you do any pre-checks? Because I know a lot of house cleaning companies have a satisfaction guarantee where if you have to call them to come back and re-clean, there's not a service fee. It is part of what they promised you the first time, and they should stand good for that. Do you look at that?
In our market, it's been pretty hard to find professional cleaners. And so it's pretty hit and miss, and it's hard to find a company that's really on it. We usually try to look for Google reviews and see if they have any clients that we could call past clients. It has been my experience here local that oftentimes when I call, it's usually an aunt, uncle, brother of the cleaning company.
Okay.
And I'm not getting true feedback either way on that. And so it's kind of testing that company out and seeing how they do the first 2 or 3 times before they'll be added to a vendor list.
Gotcha. That is really enlightening. Thank you for that.
And I'll throw this in. Most brokerage offices have team meetings once a week. And if you establish a relationship with a realtor, I've seen it that a lot of these vendors will sponsor those team meetings. They'll bring coffee, donuts, snacks, lunch, whatever for that meeting, give a presentation about the services that they offer. And that's a great way for a professional cleaning company or other types of vendors to get in with those realtors, make those relationships, get their foot in the door. And if you come with that opportunity, then you're going to do a really good job to try and keep the business of all those realtors and that office and getting all of their business. And that
I
would help you.
love that answer.
Yeah, that would help you get on a preferred vendor list with not just me, but XYZ Realty recommends, and you can even get on their website as a preferred service provider.
How as a cleaning company do I get an invite to that weekly meeting?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Aaron.
I was just going to say, you can either go through the realtor and they would go through the broker, or go direct to the broker. I will tell you that those presentations are usually about 5 minutes long, with 2 to 3 minutes of questions afterwards. They're usually pitched right before the team meeting, and everything's runs on a pretty tight schedule for those meetings, because you've got 50, 100 people sitting in a room.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those things where you come in, you pitch it very, very quickly, ask a couple of questions, and then so you're not talking about a 30-minute presentation or anything.
Right.
Just
and have
the services I offer.
And have good referrals to provide. So because it is a quick presentation, so you have good materials to leave behind for them to prove your work, to show the services that you offer. But it's just getting that foot in the door. And there are companies that I use to this day that I met through those meetings years ago, and we've done lots of business together. So,
quick sidebar. We've done a lot of meetings like that, my company personally, and a lot of homeowners association meetings where it's a homeowners meeting with a whole bunch of people who have homes that could also hire you. And one of the things that I did, it was kind of rogue. It was like a side thing that it doesn't have anything to do with fears. I'm just taking a quick sidebar. But what I would do is I would go to the area there. In every city, there's like a little place where you buy souvenirs, and I'd buy a Charlotte mug because that's the city that I live in. And I would fill it full of chocolates, and I would wrap it in cellophane. And then I would stand at the door, and I had a little basket, and I would ask for people to give me their business card so that I could give them the door prize. Like, we're going to have a drawing for a door prize. And I assigned myself at every HOA meeting, or the realtor meetings, or wherever we did, like the BNI meetings, or any meetings that I went to, Chamber of Commerce or what have you, that I was, hey, I've got the door prize for today. People were like, oh, we have a door prize committee. I didn't know about that. And then I would stand there at the door, and I would collect the business cards. And as people would give me a business card, I would give them one of mine as well. I'd say, hey, let me just give you one of mine, because you never know. Then I would stand up, and of course they say, okay, it's time for the door prize. They would stand up, even if I wasn't part of the presentation. And I would stand up, and I would say, because they would announce me like, hey, she's going to give a door prize. Tell us who you are and what this prize is. I would get up and say, hey, I'm Angela. This is my cleaning company. I'm the preferred cleaner for this particular area. And the door prize winner is, and then I would pull out a name, and I would give them the coffee mug. Well, everybody that went home had my business card, because we swapped it in that exchange. And then also they would see me at that meeting. So obviously she said she was the preferred cleaner of this company, right? And so that was kind of like my little in, and it cost me whatever the expense of the little mug, which usually you can buy them at the dollar store or something. I mean, they're not very expensive. And then the chocolates that go inside, you're talking under $5 for that presentation in front of the group. And if you're the person at the front of the group, you carry authority. And so that was a little tiny sidebar of how we would get ourselves then in front of the, I don't know, whoever it was that had the meeting.
Love that. Super
very
smart.
savvy, very savvy.
So, well, thank you. All right. Speaking of which, it is possible, and this goes back to another one of the fears that we have, is sometimes there are big projects, like a cleaning company will go in for several cleanings, and the homeowner, for whatever reason, does not pay. And so what happens is we have an incident where there's a lien against the property, and the lien against the property is held until the sale of the home. What happens if you are afraid that you have liens against your property that have not been satisfied, and you have to resolve those before the sale of your home goes through?
Well, in the due diligence process, once a home goes under contract, it will be discovered if there are liens against the property. Even if you weren't aware of them, there could be liens against the property before you became the owner of it that weren't ever cleared up, weren't ever satisfied. So those are going to be discovered by the closing attorney in North Carolina. We have, all of our closings go through attorneys. And the lien can be satisfied with the proceeds at closing. You can negotiate with the lien holder to pay off the lien, pay a portion of the lien to satisfy it. North Carolina, I think our statute of limitations for a lien is 10 years, but then the lien holder can request to extend that. But knowledge is power. So you need to know if there are liens.
Is it possible, like, let's say that I had liens on my house and I was
Mhm.
going to try to sell my house. Is it possible that in the buying of the home that the new buyer would help pay for some of that?
It is possible, depending on your market, depending on your location. You can ask the buyer to pay for some or all of your lien. Yeah. And, you know, in markets where there's very low inventory and a very competitive buying situation, then that is something that you can negotiate.
Huh.
Almost everything in real estate is negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the realtor getting with third parties and trying to figure out the best solution for the parties involved.
Yeah.
So don't not sell your home because you have fears, because some of them can still be resolved even if you don't have experience or a background about how they might be resolved, right?
Right. Yeah. And again, knowledge is power. You need to know and to work to resolve that issue at some point. If you can't right now, then work to resolve it at some point in the future. And you could talk with the lien holder and see if you can negotiate it down. You know, they might rather have a portion of what you owe them in lieu of getting nothing for the foreseeable future. So yeah, you just find out what you owe and work towards solutions to resolve it.
I love that. One of the fears that we have is home inspection revealing problems. I know, for example, I'm not in the market to sell my home right now, but that is one of the fears that I have right now. And I know that because some of the tile floors in our house, they haven't cracked, but like the I don't know what you call it, but like the grout has cracked and it has become crumbly. And so when you walk on that part of the floor, like it kind of like squeaks like it didn't before. And I think maybe like the foundation has settled a little bit. And I'm thinking that like on a what do you call it, an inspection or something, they're going to find out that like my house is like 3 inches lower or something than other, you know, like, and then I'm going to have to pay a whole bunch of money. How do you overcome the fear of that?
I'm happy to speak to that for a minute. We basically, every home, we recommend that our clients get an inspection report. And the job of the inspector is to try to find any deficiencies with the home. And so there's usually a laundry list of minor deficiencies. Really, when it comes to real estate, what makes or breaks a real estate transaction is what we call the major five. And those major five are the things that would really affect the house long term. And, you know, those things would be the foundation and the roof, the mechanicals of the house, plumbing, and electrical. And so anything outside of that realm is usually pretty easily fixed in terms of some sort of negotiation, whether it's something in lieu of or etc. So things like, you know, grout, unless it is a foundation issue, and that's what it comes up to be, those issues would be easily addressed and resolved typically. If it's a major five, that's usually where insurance gets involved. We're dealing with several of those right now where, you know, hail damage to a roof. Yeah, it's a big deal. Roof needs to be replaced. So insurance is stepping in to replace those things. And so they're usually pretty easily workable situations and solutions when it comes to most minor things. And they'll be, in most reports, there's about 30 pages of those. Doors not closing quite tightly, you know, light switches that don't work, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And again, knowledge is power. So you can have a pre-inspection done before you list your home so that you know what deficiencies are there, what defects are there, so you know what you're facing before you put the home on the market and get into a situation where you're negotiating repairs with a buyer. You can know that going in. That will help you determine what you are prepared to fix, what you're able to fix, what insurance will fix before it goes under contract. And then those things can make the deal fall apart. If it's something that you can take care of before you put the home on the market, that might be a little more peace of mind for the seller, and take away that fear that before I put my home in the market, I knew exactly what I was dealing with.
I know that when we bought the house that we're in right now, we actually owned another home, and we hired I guess it was on the closing or something, and the inspector came through. And one of the things that he found that I did not see coming was in the shower, where you go to turn the shower knob on and off, the whole hardware had become loose from the wall, and it was kind of like teetering in the wall. He said, that's not going to hold up to inspection. And we said, well, I mean, like, the shower is already built around it. How do you, and he said, you're going to have to go in through the back of the wall, and you're going to have to tighten all of that hardware, because somebody could pull it off and then it becomes, a plumbing issue, and it's not going to pass inspection. You have to pay for it. And because we were building the new home, I immediately called the inspector and I said, will you go take a look at the new home and make sure that as they're building the new home, that issue is resolved in the new home, so that when I go to sell that home, I don't have to pay for all of this expense again. Can we catch it right now in the early phases? And he went over to that home and he said, oh my goodness, this is not set up correctly either. And so we were able to, right before we had purchased the home and before we closed, I don't know if we closed on it or they were still building it or whatever. I think we hadn't finalized all the paperwork on it. But what had happened then is we were able to include that in our requests of, maintenance and repairs and all that stuff within our window of purchasing the home. They came in and they fixed all that and bolted everything down and locked it down with 2x4s or however they do it, so that it wouldn't ever come out of the wall. Because I was like, I don't want to have to pay for this expense twice on two homes. And the guy came out and he's like, yeah, this is bad. And so they were able to fix that. So now if I sell my home, that's one thing I don't have to worry about. So that fear was fixed before I even got there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Smart.
So some of the repairs can be costly, and this is one of the fears that I think many people have when they're talking about like cracked foundations, or you're talking about water damage or something like that. Are there any structural damages or structural issues that people should know about and prevent in advance, or is there a way to overcome this? Like you said, most things are negotiable. Can you negotiate something away of a costly repair that's part of something that could stop a sale?
Yeah. So if you're under contract on a home and the inspection process, you learn that there is a defect in the home that is costly and the seller doesn't have the money to make the repair, then you can negotiate that in the sale price. So we were under contract for $500,000. This repair is going to cost $75,000. So we're going to adjust the price by all of it. We'll meet in the middle. You'll negotiate that out. So yeah, that can be adjusted in the sales price if there's room for that.
Also, to kind of come up with that price, what we usually do is we'll get 2 or 3 contractors out to give us a quote. So let's say it's a foundation, we'll get 2 or 3 foundation companies out as quickly as possible, give us a quote, take that average, and now both parties know what a fair market value for that repair would be, so that neither party feels like they're being taken advantage of. 2 or 3 companies have said it's more or less going to cost X. And then we have something to negotiate with, and we can come to an agreement where everybody feels good about it.
And very often the buyer will prefer that, because then the repairs are done kind of under their watch. And they can monitor it, and it's not just, hey, the seller did some quick fix. And then we're going to find out a few years down the road that the repair wasn't done in the manner that I would have had it done had I owned the home at that time.
There's only, the one area where we see a lot of discrepancy here is on fix and flips. And so they're looking for a particular profit margin on a fix and flip. And oftentimes they've got the cheapest contractors and materials on a fix and flip. And so that's a little different scenario, but in most other scenarios, that would be pretty typical what we just talked about.
Yeah.
In the house that we live in right now, all of a sudden one day in the bedroom, I'm kind of telling on myself here, but the ceiling started to fall apart. And then the plaster started falling. And I'm like, this is a new house. What's happening here? And it seemed to be a leak in the roof, but I couldn't find the leak because there's no water up there. So I'm like, either it's coming in from the roof or something. So I had a roofing company come out and they're like, oh yeah, this is going to cost you like thousands of dollars. And it was an astronomical fee. Like they're going to have to rip off the whole roof and replace it. And it wasn't done right and all this other stuff. I was like, well, I'm not seeing wear and tear on any other parts of the roof. It's just like this one spot. So then I had a second roofing company come out and give me a quote, and they weren't as much as the first, but the price was so different that I was like, I don't want to go with either one of them, because is it all this money or is it like this much money? What's the difference, and why is the price so different? So I've got a brother that's in the roofing business, and he came to visit, and I said, hey, I hate to do this to you, but while you're here, is there any chance that I could run this by you and you tell me what? And he said, oh, I'm going to climb up on your roof. I'm going to take a look. And he came back down off my roof and he said, you have one little tiny thing where instead of the shingle going over the top, it's like this, and the water is dripping right down in here, and it's caused this little water damage, and it's literally 2 shingles that need to be replaced, and they need to hammer down that little thing. He said, I don't have any of my tools with me, or I would do it right now. But he said, you ask somebody to come replace 2 shingles, they shouldn't charge you more than $250. It can be done in less than a half hour. And I said, are you serious? He said, I'm 100% serious. So I called a different company, and I said, hey, listen, it's 2 shingles. I've got the spare shingles in my garage, like from when we bought the house, so that it matches. I said, it's one little thing that's come up. And he said, how do you know? And I said, I had 2 people come out and look at it. There were different cleaning or different roofing companies. And then my brother, who's been in the roofing business for years, climbed up on my roof and took a look. And the guy gets up on the roof. He goes, that's exactly what it is. It's that one little thing. And he repaired it with the shingles that I had. And he said, I'm only going to charge you my service fee. He said, it took less than 5 minutes to do. Boom, boom, boom. We're done. And I was like, oh my goodness, I could have paid like all the money and I replaced like my whole roof, and they could have done a full tear off and got my insurance company involved and all that stuff. And it was literally just getting the right person on the roof to give me an honest answer,
That you're fortunate that you did that. I think a lot of people get taken advantage of. I had a client who had somebody after a recent hailstorm. A company went through their neighborhood knocking on doors, said, we'll give you a free roof inspection. They did. They put a roof on for her, said her insurance would pay for it. Her insurance did not. They charged her, put a lien on her house. It was awful. So yeah, sadly, there are companies out there that will take advantage of you. So like Aaron said, get multiple estimates, have multiple contractors come out and look at your job, and if it's crazy high and crazy low, yeah, that's a little scary, but try and give yourself as much information as you can.
When we're talking about home inspections and having them take a look at your home, I've got a question about termites. Is that a big thing, or can that kind of like be passed off to the next homeowner, or is that going to stop a sale?
Well, and if you have a termite bond, you can transfer that from the seller to the buyer. Termites are a big issue here in North Carolina. I'm not sure if they are in San Antonio.
Yeah, they're a big issue here as well.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a big concern right now. I have a transaction going on, and it's a VA loan, a Veterans Administration loan, and they require termite inspection. A lot of lenders don't require it. It's like $85 to $100 here. It's so worth it to do. And it's, they're wood destroying insects. They can absolutely demolish, if you're on a crawl space underneath your home, if you don't have a good vapor barrier down there, it can do so much damage. So yeah, have a termite inspection done, and keep termite protection on your home, because you just never, as your home ages, moisture gets under your home or around your home. You just want to prevent that. It's a very preventable issue.
And so it's also, it is a big deal, but some people feel like it's the end of the world. Companies can come out and remediate it and treat them, and depending on the amount of damage, it can usually get repaired and fixed. And oftentimes it's only affecting one area, or they're only into the porch or something under one windowsill. So sometimes it's not as scary as it sounds. When you think like, oh, termites have infested my house, people get really scared, and it's usually fairly treatable.
And what about on the inspection if your home shows up with something like radon or lead paint or something like that? Because I know a lot of homeowners are afraid that they're not going to be able to, well, I'm going to have to redo my whole ceiling if it's a popcorn ceiling and it has asbestos in it or something like that. How is that dealt with as a realtor, knowing that there may be issues like that that come up?
Well, in North Carolina, any home built before 1978 has the potential for lead paint, and you have to disclose that whether you know of any lead paint in the home or not. For the most part, it's all been painted over, wood replaced, that sort of thing, but you do have to disclose it and you can test for the paint. Radon, North Carolina, there's a good bit of radon in North Carolina, and the inspector can do, it's not part of the regular home inspection, but it is an add-on for a couple $100. They'll put a radon machine in the home for a couple days. They'll test the readings at different times. And like Aaron said, with the termites, it's something that can be remediated pretty easily. So nothing to be scared of. But again, that's the purpose of the inspections, is to discover any of these defects and address them.
Yeah,
we want our homes to be safe.
Yeah. Here in San Antonio, we have a ton of asbestos. And so that's another thing as well, addressed the same way. So.
Yeah.
We've got a question that came in. They said, are home warranties a waste of money? And what about replacing roofs near the end of the life instead of awaiting a problem? Home is 2 decades old, original roof. I don't think it needs it, but.
Well, I don't think home warranties are a waste of money. I've got a transaction right now where we found very few items on the inspection report, but the home warranty company is addressing those for the seller. I represent the buyer. So those are being addressed by the home warranty company. So that's great for the seller. And like Aaron said, it's a great gift for realtors to gift their client. And as far as the roof goes, really depends on the area. I mean, you can have a roof that's, supposed to be a 25-year roof, but there's very little material left on it just because the climate's harsher there or something. So if you're I don't know, that's just a situational thing. If you're staying in the home and you want to prevent any leaks and you've got the ability to replace the roof, don't necessarily go by the age assigned to the roof. Have a roofing, somebody that you trust, go look and see how much life they say is left on it with the material that's left on the shingles.
Yeah, I would also say it depends on the type of roofing. So depending on where you are in the country, there's different types of roofing. Asphalt roofing usually breaks down quicker than most other types, unless it's wood shake. Wood shake breaks down faster than asphalt. So if you have either wood shake or asphalt, definitely have a roofing company come out and assess. If you've got aluminum or a tin roof, you can get into how old that is and if it's rusting out, those types of things. But most roofs last 20 to 30 years. And if it's at the end of its life, on an asphalt roof, if you're looking up and you can see if it sparkles, that basically means the material is gone. And what you're seeing there is fiberglass coming through. And so it means the roof is pretty well shot and should be replaced. And
so if that's the case, then is it your homeowner's insurance that covers that, or is it a warranty that would cover that?
Neither would cover that unless there's an act of God, a hailstorm, a windstorm, something along those lines.
Oh,
if it's old, you're going to be paying for that out of pocket. And so if you're looking to sell your home, it's a good idea to go ahead and get a new roof on there. That will probably come up either way. Unless you're willing to come down whatever the price of the roof is on the sale of your home, because that's more than likely something that would be negotiated in on that sale, because somebody's going to have to replace it if it's not you.
So back to the earlier question, do you do that before you put your home on the market, or do you wait until the inspector says, your roof is shot and you need a new roof? And
it's going to depend on how much money you have to work with, what you're looking at as a return on your home, and if it makes more sense to take that out of the purchase price or the sell price of your home when you're going to sell it, or if you've got, the $15,000-$20,000 to replace it right now, to do that. Now, if you have a new roof on your home, it will sell for more in the market, right?
Yeah, and that's situational. So, like Aaron said, if you're in a position where you can go ahead and put the new roof on, it's going to make yours stand out. If you're not, then you're gonna factor that into the pricing. And when an appraiser comes out and they're looking at 3 homes that have sold in your neighborhood, one just had a brand new roof and a brand new HVAC system, and yours is original to the home, that's going to factor in. So, that's gonna help dictate your price in the marketplace.
So does the appraiser come up with the price then, or is it the home inspector that tells you this needs to be replaced?
No, the appraiser won't assign, they won't tell you how much it's going to cost you to replace it, but your home inspector will tell you, this is the average lifespan of a roof with this material. This is what you can expect from yours. But this is the amount of material that's gone from your roof that's protecting your structure. You might have 3 years left on it. You might be at the very end of the life of your roof. So the inspector is going to tell you how much wear there is on it. If it is imminent that it needs to be replaced, the appraiser, their job is to let the lender know what that home is worth. So they're just going to factor that in, that, if the home's got a brand new roof on it, it's going to be worth more than the one that's got a 20-year roof on it. So that'll help you with pricing it, or deciding, okay, am I going to shell out the money for this, or am I just going to reduce my asking price to offset that?
All right. Now, if that's true, and I believe you when you say that, but then my next question is, at what point do you draw the line? Because I know a roof is a great big part of the house, but so are the shingles on the outside of or so is it, what do you call it? The
siding.
Yes, the siding on the house. And so is the landscaping. Do you replace the shrubs and rip out the trees and put in new sod? At what point do you say the windows are kind of old, they're 20 years old, I go with better, what do you call them, solar energy efficient windows and all that stuff? At what point do you draw the line and say the house is what it is?
I think that has a lot to do with the experience of your realtor. If you choose to use one, they're going to come in and assess your home as a whole and see what would give you the most amount of money for your market in terms of the things that you should fix and what would make sense. And then also they're going to talk to you about your budget and how much you're wanting to get out of the home. And that would determine if you're replacing shrubs and doing landscaping and replacing windows, or if you're selling the home as is. Because both are options, and it's really going to depend on where the seller is at and the experience of your realtor.
Wow. Okay, cool. That was a really great answer. I want to talk for a second about legal disputes. Legal disputes is one of those things that keeps coming up from some of the fears that homeowners have, that there could be legal disputes, anything from details of the deal to price of the home, the closing dates, property boundary lines. I mean, it can get nasty when it comes to some people whose stories we've heard, bickering and fighting over the boundary lines. Like, oh no, they took 2.5 feet of my property, and if they don't give it back, or if the neighbor doesn't give it back, I'm not buying the house. I mean, crazy stuff. Where do you draw the line as a realtor?
Let the attorneys fight that out. I mean, that comes down to those are legal issues. And there are, in North Carolina, we are cautioned at every turn to remind us we're not attorneys. We can't write amendments to our contract. We can't pretend to practice law. So that's, I'm fortunate that I am in a state that real estate closings are done by attorneys. And so they can find those disputes. Surveys aren't one of the most often, one of the legal issues we very often see are the property boundaries. And those you can discover through surveys, and surveys aren't typically required. Depends on your lender that they might, but typically a survey is not required. So I recommend in almost every situation that my buyer has a survey done so that they can learn of those disputes and they can be settled prior to closing.
I know that when we bought the home that we're in right now, based on the last home that we had and the things that came up when we bought that home, I know that when we bought this home, like I saved all the paperwork, like and this was a new home that we had built, but I saved like the blueprints of the house, and I saved like the land surveys, and I saved everything, not to be neurotic of it, but I was like, you know what? I don't want to have to pay to have all this done again if all
Right.
this information is the same, because like the square footage of the house is not going to change, and the land, the lot of the land is not going to change, I don't think, right?
Not unless you're adding on to it or building something.
No, we didn't. But I just wanted to make sure that, like, oh, if I don't have to go through this again for the next house, let me go ahead and save all the documentation and all the warranties for all the appliances. And I mean, like I said, neurotic, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't.
No, that's very thorough, and that's going to be great when you do sell. That's going to be great information for the new buyer to have.
Yeah.
There's in the neighborhood where I live, open fiber is being installed.
Mhm.
And a lot of neighbors are up in arms about that, and they feel like, we didn't want this. It's on our property, but no, the developer. It's up to the developer if they want to have an easement, a utility easement, and they negotiate that with, if open fiber comes in and they want to install this fiber, and the developer says, yeah, you can do it, then the homeowner really has no recourse for that. So a lot of people felt like, oh, they had a legal right to fight this, and no, you don't. That was an easement that was made prior to you purchasing the home. So
Speaking of things that you have to disclose, Teresa has a question, and she says, excuse me, had a large tree in my yard, raised a patio concrete up some, had the tree taken down, and also removed the root that was causing the issue. Is this an issue that would need to be disclosed on the sale of a home?
I would recommend disclosing everything. If you've done anything on your property, I would disclose it, especially if it was affecting the foundation or the patio. There's no harm in disclosing it, and at least people can trust you going into that situation. They know you're not trying to hide anything. Would it be the make or break on a home of someone purchasing it or not? Probably not. But I would say always disclose, because at least here in Texas, for 3 years, people can come back and sue the homeowner if
Oh,
there's
wow.
deficiencies found that were not disclosed on that disclosure. And where real estate, there's attorneys involved so much of the time, it's best just to disclose. I always encourage my clients to just disclose it.
absolutely. And it seems, and very often in real estate transactions, even the nicest people can really get their defenses up. So, if something like that were to come up and it was just an oversight, just get it out of the way. Like Erin says, just disclose everything, try and keep everything transparent, and approach the transaction with goodwill.
That's great advice. What do you do if you have difficult or unresponsive buyers where a request has been made? And like you said, there's a 3-year window where people can come back and they can sue or whatever. What if you're in the process of trying to resolve something and then like the potential buyers just ghost you?
I've actually run into this a lot over the past couple of months on both sides, where
really?
people have just gone on vacation in the middle of a transaction. They've just disappeared for a week or two. I had a client here 2 weeks ago, just missed their close date entirely.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it was 5 days after closing that they actually got a hold of us and said, hey, where do we stand? And I said, you are standing in the middle of a legal battle is where you stand. You disappeared during a closing and you never showed up for your closing date. Here's the attorney's number. And so this has happened. It has happened a lot. I was just negotiating a contract with a seller who just disappeared for 4 days, ended up having some back issues and went to the hospital and just didn't answer the phone. And this was after an agreement was sent in and supposed to be signed. And so it happens a lot. I would say that timeframes, very, very clear on timeframes, and letting people know the expectation of what's coming next, and then figuring out if they can meet those expectations so that attorneys don't have to get involved, um, because it's a legal matter at that point. You've committed on contract to do something, and you're contractually bound. And
Mhm.
so just to walk away or go on vacation or, hey, I'll respond in a few days, it's just not acceptable if you don't want to get sued.
So if you do get sued, is that a civil suit?
Um, as far as the how the it goes through court at that point, that becomes a broker attorney situation in our state.
Okay.
And so as soon as attorneys get involved in a transaction, a broker steps in, and that is their job. They're going to handle it with the attorneys, and they're going to fight that in court. And so how that's ironed out in court at that point, the realtor's job is to step back and let the attorneys take it over.
In North Carolina, our contract is reviewed every year and is modified every year. And every scenario that the attorneys who draft these contracts can imagine are incorporated into that. And so most of those things, time is of the essence. And, it lists deadlines for and stipulations for the obligations of the seller and obligations of the buyer. And when both parties execute that contract, they're agreeing to those terms. So yeah, fortunately it's a legal document, and the attorneys will handle that in the appropriate legal manner. And like Aaron said, the realtors step back. We are not attorneys and can't practice law. So, but if you are in a real estate transaction, be present, be mindful of the documents that you signed, and adhere to what you said you were going to commit to.
Which brings me to the next big fear, which is the fear of negotiation. So I don't want to assume anything, but let's suppose, for example, that I was the one that had the back injury or whatever, and I just skipped off in the middle of the closing of my house, and now I'm in the middle of a legal battle, and I'm thinking, oh no, I've got legal fees, and I'm going to get raked through the coals because I screwed up and I didn't keep my end of the bargain. Can I just back out of the contract altogether and just say, hey, I'm not going to do this? Or is that part of the legal battle now, and I'm obligated to follow through and then pay the attorney fees and all that stuff?
Yeah, you'd be in breach of contract, depending on all of the when it was and all of that. Very likely you'd be in breach of contract, and you would have to make the buyer whole. So any fees that they've paid for appraisals, inspections, their earnest money deposits, their due diligence fees, you'd be required to make those whole. And then, whatever the attorneys determined.
So that is a legitimate fear, and I can't just say fooled you guys and then like make it all go away. But now I'm on the hook for it, and I'm responsible to do whatever comes next.
Yeah.
What if that's really expensive?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
All right. So if we learned one thing today, it's once you make an agreement and it's in contract and it's on the dotted line, do not walk away, and make sure that your phone is turned on and that you can be reached, and that if it goes to a cell phone service or whatever, that you have a direct call through number where you put your realtor on the pass through so it comes directly to you, and that you don't ghost anyone.
But as long as you're moving forward in good faith, that carries a lot of weight. Our contract says that if there's proof that you're moving forward in good faith, you can't close on this date because of extenuating circumstances, that will be factored into it. But if you're just ghosting and just on a beach somewhere,
that doesn't count.
I don't think it counts.
What about losing money on the sale? Fear of losing money on the sale. Like I know, for example, that in North Carolina where I live, a year ago, there were people knocking on my door going, hey, can I buy your house? I'm like, no, it's not for sale. But now the value is not as much as it was a year ago. So if I was going to sell my house now, thinking that a year ago I could have got like top dollar for it, today I'm probably not going to get top dollar for what it was a year ago. People are not going to pay over asking price and all that stuff. So what happens? And do you just then wait and say, well, I'll wait till the prices come back up again so that I can make all the money on the house? Or do you, how does that work when I'm afraid I'm going to lose money on the sale of my home when I should have sold it a year ago and I didn't?
Well, this has happened to me years ago before I was in real estate. It was when 2008. I had a townhouse and I wanted to sell it. And I reached out to the realtor who had done most of the work in that neighborhood. And they said, no, we're not taking any more listings. They're just not selling. So I met with another realtor, and it was determined that I was going to have to bring money to closing. I would have lost money on the sale. So it was a pretty strong rental market though. So I rented my property and had great success with that. So that may be an option for someone if they can rent the property out and then sell it at some point down the road, or wait for the market to get stronger. But it kind of depends on where you are too, because it can kind of come out in the wash. If you're selling lower, you're probably buying lower too.
Mhm.
If you're selling your house and looking to buy a house, if you're selling high, you're buying high. If you're selling low, you're buying low.
So I just can't wait until the money comes back up, and then I sell my house for all the money, and then I buy a cheaper house.
And buy a cheap house. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I had people with all that boom going on. People were like, oh, Brooke, sell my house. Okay, where are you going? Well, I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
you probably can't afford to go anywhere.
Well, and that's the thing, because we did look at, I mean, so many people knock on your door and they're like, hey, can I buy your house? And then you're like, well, what? I don't know. What does a home cost? And when I looked at the homes that were selling in my area, I was like, well, heck no, I'm not going to sell my house because I've got less that's owed on the house than anything I could get into. Why don't I just stay where I am? Because I'm already happy here. I like where I am right now. Why would I move?
Real estate is so situational, and you really need to be able to lean on your realtor and all of the other professionals involved, your attorney, inspector, surveyor. You really do need to work with people that you feel good about and lean on them, because there's so many variables.
You said something a minute ago that caught my attention about renting the house. And I wonder, if you were renting the house, are the banks going to work with you to do that? Or is this like a rent for sale? Like I rent you my house and each of the payments goes towards the sale of the home, and then I'm financing it as a buyer. How does that work?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we run into that a lot here. And the reason we run into that a lot is because we deal a lot with military, and they're usually putting little to no money down. Which means in a year from now, they're going to owe just as much or more on their home that they bought it for. And so they turn around to sell it, and there's no equity in the house. And they're going, what do I do with it? I'm PCSing out, and I don't know what to do with my home. I don't personally handle rentals, but I've got really good rental companies that I work with that will come in and take that house, get it on the market, rent it out, etc. We're dealing with a situation right now where a client did a HELOC, a home equity loan, so they could purchase into another home and rent their home out because there was no equity in it, and they didn't have money to bring to closing on their other home. So there's all kinds of creative ways that you can do real estate. It's really going to depend on your agent and if that agent handles rentals. But most agents know really good rental companies that they work with, and they're usually happy to bring that company in and work something out. And again, that's going to be based on the market, what's going on in that neighborhood, and how much you can get out of the property. There's usually good management companies as well that will manage the rental part. So
is that a property management company?
Yeah,
property management?
Because most homeowners are going, I've never been a landlord. I don't know how to take care of a tenant. I don't want to fix toilets in the middle of the night, like if something happens. And so having your realtor bring in third-party companies that can help facilitate that is really standard in our industry. And it'll give, the person having to move or sell that peace of mind that, yes, maybe I don't have equity today, but I can lease out my home for another 24 months while I go to Germany, and a company is going to take care of that, and I won't have to worry about it. So,
because some money coming in can offset the price of the mortgage, right?
So again, if the house is totally upside down, we've had situations where people aren't cash flowing on the home in the rental market, but now they're only paying $200 or $300 a month to hold that home while it's being leased out, and it's not a huge mortgage payment. They're able to cover those costs and still have an asset that will be appreciating in equity over time. On the flip side of that, we see people that profit $200, $300, $400 a month. So it depends on the market and the home. but there's always a workable solution. Real estate is flexible.
Yeah, and like exactly like Aaron said, there's so many variables. There are so many professionals that we rely on, and all of these fears that buyers have, there's generally a solution to every problem. You may have to get creative. You may have to lean on some of those third-party vendors, but work with people that you trust, and more often than not, you're going to come up with a solution.
Well, you guys, this was so incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for joining me today and for answering all these questions. I know that I speak on behalf of a lot of the people that joined us today on some of the questions and concerns. And we will be answering questions in the comments and the notes below on the replay of this. If you still have questions, bring those in. We're going to be meeting back here, fingers crossed. I believe that both Aaron and Brooke are coming back next week, same time, same place, and they're going to be answering more of your real estate questions. I'm going to throw in a couple of cleaning questions as we come, because I know we got lots of house cleaning businesses that are watching this going, hey, how do we work more with realtors? The move in, move out clean is a huge part of the moving business. So thank you guys so much for including me in this. Brooke, tell our listeners where they can go to find you and learn more about you.
So again, Brooke Bryant and Charlotte, and go to Ask Brooke Bryant, and any questions that you have, I'll be happy to try and answer. I'm in North Carolina and South Carolina. I'm licensed. So that's the area that I know about. Don't know much about Texas, but yeah, if I can help, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you so much for your time today. And Aaron, where can our listeners go and find out and learn more about you or work with you?
Yeah, that's going to be at Ask Aaron Brown. And again, I'm based out of the San Antonio area, but we as realtors usually have pretty strong networks across the country. And so if you're buying or selling, from any part of the country, you can usually get a hold of us and we can point you in the right direction or get you connected with a really good realtor in your area. So we appreciate you guys, and this was really fun. We look forward to next week.
Thanks again. I'm Angela, Ask Angela Brown on all the social medias. And until this time, same place, same time next week, we will see you and have a great week. Thank you for your time today.
Have a great week.